and I'm actually now going to be bringing you a series of short videos on the Budapest Gambit. And the Budapest Gambit is typically a very exciting and aggressive opening, and it's suddenly become very popular again at top level. We saw recently in a WKZ, a strong tournament in Holland, that two players who are around 2700 ratings, so two of the best players in the world and two of the most imaginative chess players in the world. The first time it's been used, I think, at this level recently is in this game now between Boris Gelfand, who doesn't really need much introduction, and his opponent Richard Rapport. Now, Richard Rapport has become one of my favourite players of all time. He's such an exciting player to watch. He's always coming up with wacky ideas. I mean, the guy is only 18 years old, so he's got this whole chess career in front of him. And he's just so interesting to watch because in most of his games, he'll play something weird and wonderful in the opening. He doesn't play like a lot of the other players. He doesn't follow trends. He makes his own trends. He's a trend setter. And in this game, he used the Budapest to defeat Boris Gelfand. And Boris Gelfand, well, like I said, is an extremely strong player. So we're going to look at this game now. D4, knight to f6, c4, and now the Budapest Gambit, pawn to e5. Now, this is really a move where you basically sacrifice your pawn, but you just get activity for your pieces. So it's officially named the Budapest Gambit. Now, you could also say it's the Nimzo pawn slip gap move as well, because in the Nimzo Indian, you obviously put your pawn on e6, so it has been said that the Budapest Gambit is when you slip, your hand slips and you push the pawn one square too far. But obviously that's not entirely correct. Now, the only way to really make use of this from the white side to try to gain advantage is by accepting the sacrifice. You're not really going to gain much in chess if you don't take your opponent's pieces that are offered you. This is a critical test, so we're only going to concentrate on this pawn takes e5. Now, knight to g4 is the best way to continue. At some point, you want to take back your pawn on e5, and also you want to add pressure to f2. These are your two main ideas. Pressure to f2 comes with like bishop to c5 and bishop takes f2. This is your main sort of setup, with the knight coming to c6, so developing another piece, castling your king, just quick developments. Now, knight to f3 was played in this game by Gelfand. The other possibilities will be looked at in the videos coming after this, so bishop to f4. And now bishop to c5 is first play. This is important. I was going to say knight to c6, but this is a mistake here because it would allow white some other options. It's much better to first play bishop to c5. Now, the point behind bishop to c5 is that you're attacking f2, so your opponent has to play e3, and now his bishop on c1 is blocked in behind the pawn structure. The pawn on e3 sort of stops the bishop from moving to a two active square. And now again, you just want to play actively and develop quickly. So knight to c6, attacking e5. Now, let's just have I'll just quickly talk about Black's main ideas in this position. Black's main idea here is really to castle, get your king safe, put your rook on h8 on e8 on the half open line. So that's one plan you have. You want to win back your pawn on e5 by taking the pawn on e5. And a very interesting plan here, which I think is well worth remembering. And this plan is much stronger when white castles kingside. So imagine white is going to put his king on g1. Now, a very exciting idea here is pawn to a5. And now what looks like a beginner's move, rook to a6. And you're thinking, what on earth's that? Is this guy really a GM, Simon Williams? Is he telling me to put the rook on a6? Is he crazy? Well, maybe a little bit crazy, but the rook on a6 wants to come over to g6 or to h6. And imagine your king on the opponent's king on g1. With a rook on g6, you can just line up this major attack against your opponent's king position. And this is a very interesting idea and well worth remembering. a5, rook to a6, swing the rook over. So these are your main ideas here. Okay, knight to c3 was played. Black now castles. There's no need to win this pawn back immediately. There's always time to do this. Bishop to e2. Knight takes e5. Now you might as well win this pawn back. Knight takes knight, white castles. And this is a very standard position for the Budapest. And I expect if you play this opening enough, then you will get this position often in your games. Now, we've talked about Black's plan. Black's main plan is a5, rook a6, rook over to g6, f6, g6, h6, any of these squares. So it's really route one chess. Just go for checkmate, try to win the game quickly. We'll see other plans in use. You can also go d6 as Richard played and just try to develop your bishop. Rook to e8 and queen comes over to h4 often. So these are your main ideas. On the other hand, white often tries to play with b3, but white's main idea, and if you're looking at this from the white perspective, white's main idea is knight to a4, and this is a move which white really should aim to play. In this position, I'm actually going to recommend the move rook to e8. Now, I played a rook to e8 because after knight to a4, I want to drop my bishop back to the f8 square. And rook to e8 would be my suggestion here. And this is a line I think you should play if you get this as black. Your next move should be a5, rook to a6, rook to h6, followed by queen to h4, queen takes h2, checkmate. Easy chess sometimes. Okay, so rook to e8 is the move I play. Instead, in this position, Richard actually played a move which is very logical, a5. And now Gelfand made a mistake. He went king to h1. Gelfand should have played knight to a4 here. And knight to a4 would have put black in a bit of dilemma, because if black tries to keep his bishop on this quite good diagonal with bishop to a7, white can play pawn to c5, blocking this bishop in. And this is a really good positional idea from white, supporting the pawn on c5, the knight on a4. And after knight to a4, if the bishop had moved to e7, well, again, the bishop's rather passive here. White can maybe continue with something like b3 and try to put the bishop on b2. So I think this a5 move should have been met by knight to a4, but Gelfand did not play this move. Instead, after this move a5, he played a much more passive move, king to h1, which we'll come on to very shortly here. King to h1. Okay, and the idea is to move these f-pawn and e-pawn down the board. But the problem with this plan is, as soon as these pawns move on f2 and e3, the bishop on c5 becomes so much stronger, and we'll see this in action very shortly. So now, rook to a6 was certainly an option here, and a move I'd probably consider playing, try to put the rook on h6. But instead, d6 was played, just trying to develop the bishop on c8, very logical as well. f4, the knight drops back to c6. b3, trying to complete development. Rook to e8, the best square for the rook, putting pressure on e3. Rook to f3. Bishop to f5, developing another piece. Rook to g3. So white has some ideas of attacking g7 with this combination of bishop on b2 and rook on g3. Black stops this plan very nicely with rook to e6, just trying to play simply rook to g6, swapping off white's rook on the square. Bishop to d3. So now black plays this knight into b4, and black all of a sudden gets very active. Queen to d2, queen to e7. And this is a very clever move because black is trying to pressurize e3. He wants to play rook to e8 next. And after pawn to e4, he now moves his queen to h4. And this is he's got a very nice threat here. For example, let's say white played a move like a3. Can you see black's idea here? Well, black's lovely idea is queen takes g3. Bang! And the point being, if pawn takes g3, rook to h6 is checkmate. Just look how powerful this bishop on c5 has become. And you can see this in the Budapest. Remember to put your bishop on this square if you can. So, okay, well, this move a3 is clearly not a good move. Instead, the game continued. Rook to f3. And now the knight jumped into c2. Very pretty move. White cannot take the knight on c2 because a queen to e1, checkmate. And now we won't play the whole game out, but we'll just see a couple more moves. Rook here, and black now entered into an ending. And black's slightly better here because his bishop's good and he has pressure against the pawn on e4. So slight advantage to black. And okay, black just decided to swap some pieces off. White has now made some concessions with his pawn structure on the king's side by doubling his pawns here. Okay, and we're just going to see how the position transforms in the game. We got to this position here with f5, and we can see now that knight on d3 dominates the bishop on d6. Such a good piece, this knight on d3. It's also supported by this connected passed pawn on e4, so black is in a very good dominating position. Okay, I mean, at this level, the guys that, the standard of these two players, if someone gets an advantage, it should be enough to win the game, unless you're playing Magnus Carlsen. Magnus Carlsen is kind of, he's like a Houdini. He's a modern day Houdini player. And I just wanted to show you one more move. After king to f1, black now played rook to a6. And this is a really good move. And the rook now, as I've said before, very important idea for this opening. You want to play pawn to a5, rook to a6. often with the idea of swinging this rook over to h6 with checkmate ideas. And even here we see if white had played bishop to a3, well, he went bishop to c7, but if bishop to a3, you can even now consider rook to h6, threatening to infiltrate with rook to h1 or rook to h2. And this gives black a very good position. So I think that just sums up the game. Okay, Richard went on to win the game. You can look at this, find this on databases if you want to see the rest of the game. I won't keep you too long here because I think we've covered the most important points. I'll just go over those points one more time very quickly in the opening. So let's go back to the first stage of the game. So the Budapest Gambit is basically the position arising after e5, pawn takes knight to g4. And now in this game we're concentrating knight to f3. Remember you play bishop to c5 first, forcing e3. And now your main ideas again are just to go knight to c6, attacking e5, castle quickly, put your rook on e8, the half open line, play a5, play rook to a6, and play rook to g6 or to h6. This queen can often come over to h4 later on, checkmate your opponent, play quick developments, follow these ideas, you should get a very exciting game. And I really hope to see some of you guys take up the Budapest Gambit after this very short video. I'd love to hear your comments about this. So thanks for now, and hopefully I'll see you again soon.